Good afternoon. It's great to see so many familiar faces here. In case you don't know me, I'm Dennis Daly. I'm Department Head of Archives and Special Collections. Am I coming through the speaker there? Very good. Okay, very good. Thank you so much for being here for this open house for the Archives and Special Collections. And as most of you know, we're featuring the Amador collection, which we have here in the archives. And I saw most of you in there, and if you didn't get a chance to go in, maybe after the presentation, you can go in and check out some of the stuff. If you have questions about any of it, this is the day to ask, because you've got a bunch of experts here today. And I'm not talking about me, I'm talking about a bunch of people here in the audience who I will introduce in a minute. Want to thank our Dean, Kevin Comerford. So in the back, he's way back in the back. Thank you for being here, Kevin. And a few other people I want to recognize. We do have a few descendants of the Amador family here with us today. If you all wouldn't mind standing up. All right. You want to introduce yourself to everybody and let them know who your ancestor was.
I'm Martin Amador Campbell, and I'm the grandson of Corinne Amador. Corinne inherited the Amador Hotel and ran it for a period of time until she died in 1932. I was born in the Amador Hotel. My dad was born in the Amador Hotel, and Corinne was born there too. And we were all born in the same room. Great. Well, I'm pleased to be here today. Thank you very much. If you have questions for me, stick me on.
Thank you.
I am Judy Robbie, and I am the great-great-granddaughter of Amelia Amador. And these are my brothers, Mark Jordan and Tim Jordan. And we've been keeping up with Dennis and lots of folks here in Las Cruces just to find out so many nice things about our family. So thank you, everybody that's involved, and we love being here. Thank you.
Just to add, all 6 of the kids went to NMSU and graduated.
All proud names.
Yes.
We also have several members of the Amador Hotel Foundation here. Could you all stand up as well? Amador Hotel Foundation. All right. Yes. Dean Fulton, Dr. Sonia Hooper, and Deb Dennis. If you don't know about the Amador Hotel Foundation or the Amador Hotel, surely you've seen the Amador Hotel. These people are undertaking a Herculean effort to restore that hotel to its former grandeur. And they've been working on this a long time, and we have a bit to go yet, but it looks like the city is putting some financial support behind it. So look for some real progress on the hotel in the coming years. And thank you for all you do. We appreciate that. Also, we had our colleagues over at the NMSU Museum bring some items. So while we have the Amador papers here in the archives, those are mostly paper-based collections and photographs and ephemera and things like that. Over at the NMSU Museum, they have artifacts that came out of the Amador House and artifacts that were subsequently donated to the museum. And Norma Hartel, who's a curator at the NMSU Museum, was kind enough to bring some of those things over today. Norma is in the back there. So thank you, Norma, for bringing those things. Is Fumi still here? No? Okay, Fumi is the director of the museum. He was here earlier. Let's see. So what we're going to, well, one more person who we want to introduce, very special person to all of us here in the archives, to me personally, Dr. Cherry Reynolds, who's on the front row here. Let's give her a round of applause. Then I'll brag about it. So Dr. Cherry Reynolds was in the anthropology department here at NMSU and also was a curator at the NMSU Museum for many years. And following that, came and volunteered here in the archive for many years, helping us with the Amador papers, organizing and preserving those papers. And she's been working on writing the biography of the Amador family. And we look forward to seeing that come out soon. And she probably knows more about the Amador family than anyone else on the planet.
Amen.
Yes.
And she is very special to all of us here. And Terry, we really thank you for everything you've done. We're so happy to have you here with us today.
Yes.
Glad you know. So what I want to do quickly before I introduce another speaker is tell you a little bit about our progress. As most of you know, we received a National Endowment for the Humanities grant last year to digitize all of the correspondence in the Amador family papers. This is about 15,000 pages of correspondence. It's massive. Almost all of it in Spanish, and dating from about 1860 up into the 1930s, 1940. And so we have been working on this project with the help of a group of incredible students who are they're the ones doing the work, right? And a few of the students are here today. Could you guys stand up in the back? Those are three of our amazing students, Mr. Garcia, Mesilla Stena, and Gabby Gutierrez. We have a total of 7 students who are working on the project right now. So what they are doing is scanning the correspondence to very high standards, national standards. But the difficult part really is that they are reading the letters, but these letters are in Spanish, handwritten letters in Spanish. These students are reading the letters. They're extracting all of the essential information or descriptive information, which we call metadata. And I'll show you a little bit of what some of that is in a minute. They're extracting that information, and then they are translating all of that information into English. It's just a phenomenal job, and it blows me away every time I think about what they're doing. So there was an article that our friends from marketing and NMSU Marketing and Communications, Tatiana Favela, who's over here.
Hi all.
She wrote a wonderful article for us that came out on March 29th, it looks like. And I just want to play a short video that they created that gives you an idea of what the students are doing. Thank you so much for putting it. So to let you know what we've accomplished so far, as I mentioned, it's about 15,000 pages of correspondence. We started this in October, and up to now, I should say they, the students have scanned 4,100 pages of correspondence, which equals 1,844 letters. So you might ask yourself, okay, you're scanning this stuff and creating all this metadata. Great. What are you going to do with it? Show you. So we have a website. This is it. It's in the NMSU Library Digital Collections. And so this is the collection of the Amador family correspondence. This is the landing page for the website. So you can read a little bit about the family and a little bit about the project. And then we can go here to browse to actually get into the content. And so the letters you can see are here. And there's a little bit of information on the front. If you click on one of the letters, then it opens up the entire letter. This one, so it looks like, is Amelia Amador de Garcia, great grandmother of our friends here, to her sister Maria Amador de la Guerra, 1894. There's the image of the letter. This is page 1. And as you can see, the other pages are there. And then the really tremendous information is this, the metadata or the object description. So I don't know if you can read that from where you are, but just to give you an idea of the quantity of information, the reason we pull out this information is to allow researchers as the best access we can so that they can search these different kinds of information to find what they're looking for. So we give the object a title. The series pertains to which family member it belonged to, the box and the folder number. And as you can, I don't know if you can see it, but all of this metadata is both in English and in Spanish, which is a pretty innovative. We didn't find many other digital collections like this that are using bilingual metadata. The name of the collection, let's see, then when we get down here, so the salutation, both in English and so this was in Spanish, so it was Querida Maria, and then translated into Dear Maria, of course. And then who the letter is from, to whom the letter is sent, what their relationship is. So in this case, their family, and the second level of relationship is that they're sisters. The sender's city is Albuquerque, New Mexico. The sender's state, New Mexico. The sender's country, because remember these people were living both in the United States and Mexico, so the sender's country. Other people mentioned in the letter. So anybody, any name that appears in the letter, they're capturing that information. And then other places mentioned in the letter. So maybe that's written from Albuquerque to Las Cruces, but if they talk about Silver City, then that's captured in the metadata as well. And then we have these Library of Congress subject headings down here again, both in English and Spanish. So in this particular one, sisters, families, health, diseases, religion, gossip, that appears in most of the letters. Flowers, textile fabrics, fellowship, and then just some technical information. How many pages is it? What kind of paper, what kind of ink? Are there any notes? Let's see. Yeah, the rest of it is just kind of technical information. Personal correspondence. Yeah, and then at the very bottom, we are capturing the information for the students who actually did this work. They are part of the metadata. So in this case, the metadata cataloger was Melissa Perez, of our students. So that's what that metadata looks like. And what makes it so powerful then, if you can think about a researcher who might be coming in wanting to explore, well, let's talk to a researcher. Katherine, what's something that you might be interested in finding in these letters, whether it be a person or
Medicine.
Madison?
Medicine. Medicine.
Medicine. Okay, medicine. I thought you knew another family member that was here. Okay, so let's try medicine. And so the thing about these subject headings, these are Library of Congress subject headings. So sometimes you have to know what the right term is, right? It looks like medicine is an approved Library of Congress subject heading. So it found, let's see, what does it say? How many we found here? Oh, it found 2. So it found 2 letters that mention medicine in particular. If we looked at health, for instance, then we're probably going to find a lot more. So let's try that. So medicine, there are two letters that came up. Look for health and see what we get. 42. So those are, those themes are kind of intertwined, so a researcher would probably look for both of those things. Anyway, so that's the way that works. Again, if someone is looking for, how about the families, or is there someone that they might have mentioned in the letter that we could search for? I know one. Is there a Miss Provencio here? She didn't make it. Okay, we had a descendant of someone who sent a lot of letters to the family who was going to be here, but I guess she's not here. But his name was Fabian Provencio. He wrote a lot of letters to the family. He was the mayor of Juarez for a while. He was a newspaper publisher in Juarez, and I think in the late 19th century. And he was a good friend of the Amador family. And so if we search for him, of course, we find a lot. And these, in the first two cases, it's letters sent from him. In this case, he's probably mentioned somewhere. Anyway, I'm not going to bore you anymore, but that's kind of where we are in the project. So far, we have, I mentioned how much scanning we've done. We have about 200 letters, which are up on the website. All right. Anybody have questions about that?
I have a question.
Yes.
So it looks like the letters that have already been scanned, a researcher or a student can start searching through them, right? Like you're not waiting for all of them to be scanned to be usable.
Exactly.
Right.
So we're putting them up as we go. So we still have at least 60%,
Right.
70% more to scan. But yeah, as we're getting, once the metadata is complete, that's the most time consuming part, is creating all that metadata, getting it into this system. Once that's complete, we're putting it up. So
Right.
yeah.
And
So
just
it'll grow.
out of curiosity, do you guys maintain or have a list of those search terms for students in case because it's very easy to search under a term that's just off a little bit and you get nothing. So I'm just curious if you guys have a list or if there's one available or.
Yeah, it's something that we've talked about, actually publishing somewhere on the site, a list of the majority of the terms that we're using, because we are trying to keep the number of terms to a set number.
Of course.
How many do we have? Do you guys know? 50 or 60 official?
Yeah, around 70.
Around 70 so far, yeah.
I
So
could just
if-
see students searching and searching under eating, when really what they want is food. So
Yeah.
having that basic list could be
exactly. Yeah.
super helpful. Okay, great.
And as was the example that we just went through
Right.
here. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so we are talking about adding that to the website. Yes,
So Dennis, are the keywords, are they also Spanish words?
yes, yeah. So what we're doing, what we're using is official Library of Congress subject headings, which are in English, and then our students are translating those terms into an equivalent Spanish term. So we're not using a Spanish language thesaurus or authority terms.
Can you do the search in Spanish then? Could you?
Yeah.
Okay, so you could put salud and that would work?
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely, yeah. Let's just do that to see what happens. Salud. Yeah, 42. So it's the same number that we got for health. So that's the Spanish term salud. Health is.
But they're doing a good job. They need a raise.
Anybody still here?
Yes, I was wondering, how did you decide where to start?
Yeah,
My understanding is that each student has a particular family member that he or she is working on in terms of the letters. But are you starting with a particular date
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
where do you start?
so what we did is we decided to go by series. I mentioned that the collection is arranged into series. Each
Right.
series represents a family member. So there's a series for Martin Amador, Refugio Amador, and then for each of the children. So when we started, we thought, well, let's not start with Martin because that's going to be the hardest probably to read. That's the early letters from the 1860s and 70s. So we decided to start with at sort of a later date. And we started on one series, which was Maria Amador. It's just sort of random why we picked her out of the kids. I think it was because her letters started a little bit later than some of the other ones. Because going into it, we didn't know how this was going to go, and we didn't know how difficult this was going to be for the students. And so we wanted to pick a series that we thought, well, this might be the easiest
A
one to
little
do.
easier.
Yeah. So we're going by family members. So all of the students started working on Maria. And then once we finished that, then we moved to another family member. And I think we've gone through about Maria, Julieta, Francisco, and Juan. And I think we're working on Emilia, right? And then we're going to work back. Martin and Refugio will probably be the last ones. Any other questions? Yeah.
So I noticed some of the stuff in there is not correspondence, but it's like, inventories for the store, things like that. How are those handled?
So we are trying to stick to correspondence. So what you're seeing in the room in here, there's all kinds of different, this collection has so much, a variety of materials in it. But this project is just about the correspondence. So, and that's the way the collection is organized. So again, that's a series. Once you get into the family members, then there's the correspondence series for that family member, the business records for that family member, and the financial records for that member. So we're just concentrating on correspondence for this project. Otherwise, it's overwhelming. There's actually a lot more correspondence in postcards. There's a couple of thousand postcards in this collection, and all of those postcards have correspondence. We're not doing that as part of this project, but maybe we can get another grant and try to tackle that stuff later. Any other questions? All right, well, afterwards, feel free again to explore some more. If anyone wants to do like a behind the scenes tour, go back and see our stacks, we can do that as well afterwards. But now I went on a lot longer than I thought I was going to talk for like 5 minutes. And sorry, because what I want to do is introduce Dr. Katherine Massoth. Katherine is from the University of New Mexico. She's a history professor at the University of New Mexico. And I would say second to Terry Reynolds is probably the most knowledgeable person about this family. She spent 10 years now.
A little longer.
A little more than 10 years coming here and going through this correspondence. And she's written a couple of books based on this correspondence. And so we want Dr. Massoth to just tell you a little bit about how a researcher uses a collection like this. So you have an idea. And so you understand, I mean, I know you all understand how valuable this collection is, but to hear it from a researcher is another thing. So please help me welcome Dr. Katherine Massoth.
Save trees. Yeah, as Dennis said, I've been coming here since 2011. When I started my dissertation research. And what I wanted to do today is talk about, well, one, I love this collection, but, and actually I really appreciate what you said, Dennis, about how historians use this work. And that is because a historian, like, while I am obsessed with this collection and obsessed with Amador's, my job as a historian is to kind of contextualize, right, a really local phenomenon into a larger context. So what I wanted to do is kind of discuss the Amador in a larger context, specifically thinking about social networking. And actually it was a conversation with the students a few weeks ago that made me think of this idea. Let me go back. And just kind of reminded me that as a 19th century historian who buries herself in these letters every year, we have lost sight of the idea of social networking prior to Instagram and Facebook and what did it look like. And so in my work, my larger work, I look at networks and larger networks. And the Amadors are part of my larger work on networking in the borderlands. And one line in a letter that it enraptured me years and years ago, and I always tell this story, but I was at the State Archives, not here, State Archives, And one man told me, "You'll never find domesticity in the archives." And then I came down here and I found this letter that Refugio, who I imagine was sitting in her Las Cruces home carrying Amelia on her lap, read this letter from her sister. "Mother says for you to send all that you just so that we can do it for you." Right away, I found domesticity, right, in the archives. And as a historian, I have to take this further. I can't just say, okay, I found domesticity. So my job as a historian is to kind of contextualize this. So what does this simple gesture mean? Well, it's not surprising, right, amongst women that a sister would write to another sister that, "Hey, I'm going to help you with your sewing after giving birth to a child." However, the weight of this statement is amplified when we remember that the US-Mexico border separated these two sisters, right? Not only were these sisters separated by 50 miles between El Paso del Norte, or today's Ciudad Juarez, but also the US-Mexico border had divided them. Nevertheless, the central concerns for the sisters were helping each other out with their housekeeping. So for the last decade, I've been sifting through this correspondence and trying to make sense of the Amador family in the Mesilla Valley and trying to understand particularly the women of the Amador family and their domesticity and their daily life. And the Amador and Ruiz women actually play one part in my larger research of women in the borderlands. And I say that they're emblematic. They symbolize women of the borderlands and how women use their homes to handle the transition from Mexican control to US control. And the Amador letters over the last decade have allowed me to trace many aspects of Spanish-Mexican women's domestic lives. Birthing practices, borderlands medicine, sewing and dress culture, chores and housekeeping, recipes and food, entertainment and social activities, political identities, property exchanges, marital practices, and perhaps discord. But today, what I wanted to highlight is my research on social networking. And today, when we think of social networking, we think Facebook and Instagram. But when you talk to historians or anthropologists, networking has been around for a very long time. As a historian, I understand that letter writing is a very intimate act that allows people to maintain strong networks along long distances and has been around for centuries. And I think that the Amador letters also allow us to understand and challenge the image of New Mexico as a frontier that was lonely, desolate, and quiet. It was very interconnected across time and space. So my research places New Mexico and specifically the Mesilla Valley actually in conversation with Arizona. I know we don't get along. We need to. Arizona and New Mexico comes in together. My research places them into a historical network, social network. But the social network that my research has been looking at more recently is a social network that has connected the Mesilla Valley to El Paso del Norte or Ciudad Juarez. And the Amador family is indicative of what historians and anthropologists call a regional extended family network that linked the northern frontier from Mexico City to the state of Chihuahua all the way to places in Santa Fe. Refugio Amador has connections to family members in Santa Fe. And these regional networks and kin networks were part of the lived reality of the Mesilla Valley and the greater Rio Grande region from the Spanish and Mexican periods onward. Now, how do you stay connected across these long distances? Letter writing, right? That's how you stay connected. So in territorial New Mexico, these networks were not brand new. Instead, what they did is they followed the contours of the Camino Real, the royal road of the interior lands, and they followed the roads all the way from Mexico City to Okeowinge, which is a distance of 1,600 miles. And remember that, so Okeowinge, a little bit north of Santa Fe to Mexico City. Remember that distance as we go forward, okay? And this route from the Spanish period to the present linked indigenous peoples, Spanish settlers, traders, miners, missionaries, and the military. And over time, trains of carretas traveled yearly from Chihuahua City to Santa Fe and back, impressing the ruts of regional, social, and economic networks, connecting people across time and space. And what did they carry with them as they traveled? Letters, right? They exchanged the letters. In fact, once I was giving a talk here and someone asked, well, how did these letters get sent before the post office? The Carretas. And you can actually read some of these letters and it'll say, I've given a letter to so-and-so and he's going to give it to you when he gets to town. So central to this idea is not just of my research is not just social networking, but that it's women's job to do this social networking. And in anthropological research, there's this idea of kin work and that families stay together by work. Like it takes work to keep a family together. And I argue in my book and in the larger work that Refugio Amador does the work of kin work in the Amador family. And what is kin work? Well, women's work of kin work is the work done within the households that allow women to maintain kinship contact across households. It's how families maintain contact across households. So that means today would be how you plan your family's holidays, right? How do you think those events happen? Mom, right, plans Thanksgiving dinner with your aunt, etc. Okay, so Refugio was doing those things. How did Refugio do that? Well, Refugio regularly corresponded with her mothers, her sisters, and female friends in Chihuahua, Albuquerque, and Santa Fe. She also received letters filling her in with gossip and news. And I love this one. I've shared this one before. I just love this one because this one's just like chocked full. It's like a Facebook post. And this is from Concepcion, her sister. It's September 1863. I won't forget you if I see something nice. She's probably getting ready to go travel, go shopping. I send greetings from my chona, my aunt, my uncle, my cousin, Doña Jesusita. I send Amelia many kisses. My cousin Paloma says congratulations. I ask you not to forget to send me a copy of the prayer for my cousin Gregoria's Saints Days. Don't forget to write me whenever you can and tell me about Amelia. Tell me if you do not go to mass and when you are coming to visit, and if you already live alone with a separate kitchen. Right? And this letter tells me so much about her daily life, right? It gives me so many details. One, I know that she's living with her mother-in-law at this point, and I know that perhaps it's not going well because there's a sense of tell me if you're going to be living alone. I also know that there's religiosity. I also get a sense of the closeness of this family. And these letters give me a sense of shared intimacy between sisters on different sides of an international border. These letters are filled with familial affection, and they reflect the gendered labor of kinship that travels not only across thresholds of families, but also across the border. Women do this work, and it's still women today, but in the 19th century, it's mainly women who are doing this work. And correspondence was central to how the Amador and Ruiz women maintain their connections across the miles from Albuquerque to Santa Fe, to St. Louis, to El Paso del Norte, and down to Chihuahua City at moments. So through extensive correspondence, which you've been seeing, mostly in Spanish, the family members maintain close ties. Additionally, the daughters would write to Refugio, giving her reports, often chismes, gossip, news about dances, prayers, details on who was sick or who had passed. And when I met with the students, they noted that the letters were so detailed. And one thing I pointed out to them is, why do you think that is? Because that's your one time a day that you got to send your report, right? Versus sending a text. And that's when I had that moment of, yeah, we've lost sight, right? That now we have instantaneous information. Well, in the 19th century, your letter was your one time a day that you reported the information. So in 1886, here's a report, and I just love this one because I get a sense of the humor of Refugio. And if you've been immersed in Refugio's letter, there's not a lot of humor, there's a lot of religiosity. But this one is a good one. And Refugio, what's going on here is it's actually Amelia. She's writing to Amelia, and Tilly is staying with Amelia up in Albuquerque, in old Albuquerque at the time. And she's filling her in on the news in 1886. Your little sister Karina is very fat. and she laughs a lot. And Julieta is very skinny and remembers you a lot. I hope that when you come, you'll be very fat and tan. Amelia, if Tilly is sad and she wants to come alone, send her to the driver and I will receive her here. I love this because this tells me something as a gender historian that I think we often take for granted. They're going to send the little daughter alone from Albuquerque to Las Cruces. Is that the image we have for the Jornada de Muerte? No, right? And they're willing to do this. How does that make us rethink this region, right? Of the safety of a little girl going on a stagecoach, right? From old Albuquerque to Las Cruces, and the interconnections that this family must have had to be able to trust a stagecoach driver, right? This really makes us rethink social networking and our relationships. I love this letter because we see the bonds between families, but we also learn that women are traveling alone long distances, right? And that during this time, there's also some discourse about mothers caring about their parents, right? This is not a 20th century phenomenon where mothers are giving advice on how their daughters look. I like this because it kind of puts us in the present at the same time that it keeps us in the past. Additionally, during her visits to Mexico, this is like the best letter in one of the best letters in the collections. During her visit to Mexico, Maria reported, right, sharing local gossip. While attending a dance in August 1892, Maria reported that Doña Conchita Ochoa is very ill with dysentery from eating too much chili con queso, while Doña Lolita McGoffin has an indigestion from her dinner of chili con queso and elotes, which, if you know anything about the McGoffins, they're another merchant family, another networking family connected to St. Louis. So who are they socializing with? Lots of merchants, right? They're a very interconnected social networking family. Tilly also frequently visited Amelia, and in fact, at points she's living with Amelia. And correspondence served as a way like we would use text messages today. Often Tilly or Amelia would plan their visits via these letters. And in September 1893, they were clearly planning a visit. And Tilly and Amelia were planning a trip to Amelia's home in Old Albuquerque for the fair. And Amelia wrote the following about the plan. I received your little letter, and we will be very happy to have you come to the fair. I have asked Doña Josefita Armijo if there's room next to the living room, and there they can put a bed for you where Julieta sleeps, because Julieta is visiting too, and you can sleep there. And as for food, you eat with us. I think the Stevensons are coming, as Doña Simona wrote to me asking about the prices. Julieta is very happy to know you are coming. What do we learn about this family in this? Who are they connected to? They're Armijos, right? When Amelia is living in Albuquerque, they live in the Armijo house, right? They live in another trading house. They're very interconnected. They have a social network across this time and space, which is probably why they felt very safe sending their daughters these long distances for these marriages and for these trips. Additionally, we get the sense that not only are the sisters writing to each other, but then Refugio's best friend is writing to her best friend's daughter to plan to go visit her, right? So Simona is Refugio's best friend. She's writing to Amelia. So we get a sense of the intimacy, not just between sisters, but between parents and children, right? And across generations. And this letter I love, and I just took some quick notes today as a historian. What would I do with this letter? Well, we see social networks between sisters. We see networks between merchant families and the women in those merchant families. We see entertainment activities, and no men are named, right? This is not how we think of 19th century womanhood, right? We often talk about 19th century womanhood as a private sphere, and women are maintained in the home. Does that sound like that here? No, there's a very interesting challenge of gender roles going on here. Additionally, got some gossip. for you. When her mother was away from the Mesilla Valley, Maria always kept up on the news. In May 1896, she reported to Refugio, who was in Juarez, that a friend and Pancho Francisco went to Chihuahua, and they go crazy with the girls. Francisco was particularly interested in a gringa during an evening dance. And then Maria reported a conversation between Francisco or Pancho and Dr. Ignacio. And this is what she wrote. Dr. Ignacio told Pancho that he knew that he had gone to see the señorita, that he had seen the two of them sitting in the garden. I get the sense there that it was probably the daughter, Dr. Ignacio, that they saw in the garden. He was telling her, I saw you in the garden with my daughter. And the letters, like Dennis said, are filled with these chismas and charla gossips and chat from the Amador and Ruiz women's social circles. These letters speak to how the Amador and Ruiz women were deeply involved in extended relationships and community networks, tying all the way from Las Cruces to Albuquerque and El Paso del Norte. Before I conclude, I want to end with one letter that I think shows the importance of the existence of a social network before Facebook with these letters. The Amador women often traveled, and they often traveled very long distances. And in the summer of 1895, Maria and Tilly, Maria's 20 and Tilly's 15, traveled with two sisters from the Loreto Academy down to Mexico City. Remember I told you the Chihuahua Trail, okay, Wingay, all the way to Mexico City. There's a reason I'm a professor. There's a reason I signposted that to you. They followed that trail all the way down to Mexico City. Their trip included a visit to the Shrine of Our Lady of Guadalupe and a visit to Doña Carmen Romero Rubio, the wife of the President Porfirio Diaz. And while in Mexico City, Maria and Tilly also paid a visit to their aunt, Luz Garcia, their cousin, Refugio's cousin. And when they went there, Refugio's cousin's son talks to them. And we get a sense that they only knew each other via letters at this point. And Tilly reports about this visit. So on July 27th, 1895, Tilly says about meeting this distant cousin. Yesterday at 4:30 in the afternoon, we went to see cousin Luz. She was overjoyed to meet us. We also met Luce and Cito, who are grown boys now. Luce said that he had known at once that I was the same one as in the pictures of my first communion. What do you see there about a social network? Anybody? How did they know each other when they met? Photographs. They knew each other from photographs, right? They were automatically connected from this long network that their mothers and their sisters had maintained. And this is not a small thing, right? For families to know each other over 1,000 miles apart in the 1890s, between 1860 and 1890 is quite significant. So as a historian, why are these letters important? Well, these letters speak to how the Amador and Ruiz women were deeply involved in maintaining their families' extended relationships and community ties in both Las Cruces and El Paso del Norte. Letter writing, which is an act of kin work, the work of keeping a family together, allowed women to maintain closeness across households and to sustain larger ideas of family and community. The Amador women's almost constant correspondence. I almost put up my chart. I've charted so I started this before they digitized things, and I've charted the letters. I started charting all the times they wrote to each other, and the chart is just like squiggly lines because there's so many letters. I had to stop at a point. But they almost had constant correspondence, at some points writing multiple times in a day. And the correspondence provided a solution for any longing that they wanted for immersive contact across long distances. The letters allowed them to fill up distances and fill up spaces in ways that we don't think of space today. The extensive correspondence also allowed the women to define their own communities and define their own regions and connect. Through letter writing, they also filled the mundane daily details of community life in their own ways, right? They created their own social systems. And In the work of kinship, we see the invisible labor of women within families and the invisible connections that linked households across thresholds, but also across national boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Appreciate that. Okay, so if you haven't had a chance to go in and look at all the cool stuff in there, please do that. Or if you did and you want to see it again or ask questions about any of it, as I mentioned, there are a lot of experts here who can help answer questions. We can show you that Clotilde's first communion photo that she mentioned in that letter. It's in there, the original photos in there, so we can show you that. And again, if anyone would like to do like a behind the scenes tour, see how archives are organized and how we store our stuff, we can do that as well. Maybe if you're interested in that, let's meet just right over here in this area. And thanks again for coming.
Thank you.
And I'm going to give a little short tour of the material that's on display here in the Stras Reading Room here at New Mexico State University Library. Here's the dress that came over, the wedding dress that came over from the Amador collection that's housed at the Univeristy Museum here on campus in Kent Hall. Of course, in the collection, there are lots of series of material, as Dennis mentioned, lots of paperwork besides just the correspondence. And so we've kind of tried to lay out representative sample of the types of material that are held here in the Amador family collection here in Mexico State University Library. We're open from Monday to Friday, 9 to 4 during the week. And during the semester, you don't need to make an appointment, but if you'd like to come in, we always encourage people to reach out to us so that we can pull material ahead of time. If you are interested in coming to take a look at this, there's a lot of photographs in the collection that document the family as well as the growth of Las Cruces overall. This table houses or shows a lot of the correspondence that is currently being digitized by students through a National Endowment for the Humanities grant that we received last year. And then finally, more of the material. Lots of catalogs that document the business end of Martin Amador's enterprises. And then many broadsides that showcase the many civic events that took place here in Las Cruces, in El Paso and Juarez. So it's quite a large display of graphic material held in the collection. It's one of the most heavily used collections here at the New Mexico State University Library. Well, we appreciate you joining us. Thank you.